whiskey and whatever.
So speaking of co-ops, had a coffee with a mutual friend of ours, and we were talking about kind of the next generation of business model, where you've got traditional corporations where they hire everybody to work for the corporation. Then you got the co-working thing, right? And then somewhere in the middle is this idea that somebody has a skill set, and that skill set can be applied within a number of organizations. It's not really like a freelancer thing, but within this large, kind of more nebulous organization that multiple people can contribute to multiple teams or sub-organizations. Is that making sense? So it's kind of like a co-working thing. Like you got this guy over here and he's running a food truck, and you got this guy over here and he's an accountant, you got this guy who's a designer, and you got this guy who's maybe a network engineer or whatever. And each of them need a piece of the other person's skill set, so it's like a giant co-op where you're all helping to build each other's business. So
you like the idea?
I like the idea. What he and I agreed on, which is probably the major obstacle, is how do you structure that legally, and how do you structure that financially?
It's kind of like, it's anarchy, and anarchy doesn't work in my opinion. I mean, someone's got to be in charge, So like if you and I are building a bridge, someone's got to say, hey, we need the foundation poured, hey, you guys bring these girders over.
Right. And we're not talking about the Sex Pistols kind of anarchy. We're talking about
So I mean, but the virtual agency, call it an agency, a consulting firm, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that does exist. The way people are working is changing. The way that we're going to be working is going to evolve even more.
Well, it's like he brought up the way Andreessen's doing a lot of stuff now, right? So if you get funded by Andreessen, they're going to give you a certain amount of administrative and operational support. So you don't have to think about accounting, for example, or you don't have to think about the compliance issues. You just have to build your product. And they're not the only ones. Like Google Ventures does this too, where they have a design team where if you have a product or service idea, they'll put that in front of the design team, and the design team will help you mold that and make sure that it looks good and functions well.
How's it different from a VC fund? How would you say that differs? Because they're working more with you. I mean, a lot of VCs are taking, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but a good number, are getting a hands-on. I mean, they want to know what's going on.
They're getting because they've got a significant amount of money invested. What this is not that they're putting money in and taking equity out, is that it's simply supplying an organizational structure for that company to lean on. So instead of, let's say that...
But what are you leaning on?
Let's say we've got an idea. So you and I have an idea, we're going to build an app, right? But we don't have any money. We have enough money that we can bootstrap ourselves, maybe hire somebody to help us out, but there's all of that other stuff that we don't want to deal with. Legal, accounting, compliance, all that kind of stuff that we don't want to deal with, but we need somebody to deal with that for us. Like right now in my company, I've got an accountant that handles bookkeeping. I've got outsourced HR. And guess who gets to communicate between all of them? Me. Right? And that takes my time away. If those guys were on a team that I could go to and pay them as a package, I could say, all right, I'm paying all you guys together, whatever it is. Let's say it's $3,000 a month to run that side of the business. But if those guys were on a team together, where I didn't have to be the middleman trying to communicate between all of them, and I could just go and buy that outsourced as a service, that'd be kind of cool. So what we're saying here is that if there were all of those things, if the team was there, an entire corporate structure was in place, from chief executive down to mailroom guy, and I came in with my idea and I got to use any bit and piece of that organization as I needed, kind of a la carte, but I had one service fee to pay for it as an organization.
Who are you paying the service fee to?
To the organization. That's like my dues as a member of the co-op.
Gotcha.
Right? So I joined this co-op and there's all of these people in it. Maybe there's an accountant out there and he likes being an accountant and he likes working with startups, but he doesn't want to go out on his own. He wants to be part of a thing still. Right? So you get the security of a large organization, but you get the entrepreneurial mentality of a co-working facility or of a startup. because everyone's kind of in there doing their own thing for the mutual benefit of all the other people who are in the thing. Well, but how do you structure it in a way, and this was particularly with the way that, that I was thinking about doing things with the consulting business, is that we could create a co-op of other consultants. And what it comes down to is you've got, let's say you and I are it's not a joint venture, it's not anything. We're just in a co-op together.
Okay.
And we have complementary but somewhat overlapping skill sets and services that we provide to the general public.
Yeah.
And I say, all right, I'm going to go out as 9 Labs and I'm going to sell your services because you're good at marketing, we'll say, right? But I'm good at design, as an example. But you're out selling your services as Rick, and you're selling my services as Rick. Mm-hmm. So when your phone rings, how are you going to answer the phone? You're going to answer it as Rick. What if it's my client that I sold calling you? Well, now we have a problem, because who's working for me? Is it 9 Labs or is it Rick? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see
so
what you're
that's why
saying.
creating the larger organization that has a single entity kind of makes sense.
Maybe some people don't know this, but we were involved, when Amy and I decided to launch Strongbox West, it was 2009, we knew about jellies, we knew about some tweet ups.
Yeah.
I think people probably forget those words even, but there were jellies happening in Manhattan and Brooklyn and in San Francisco and tweet ups. And then, it evolved into co-working, and we got involved with, the few co-working places that were around. And, we were having discussions online about, is the word hyphenated? And that's how deep the conversations were. They weren't deep at all, because we were just beginning to scratch the surface of this new thing called co-working. So I've kind of watched it go from, is it hyphenated? Discussions with, some people. Alex Hillman probably doesn't get enough credit in Philadelphia. Tara Hunt, in San Francisco at the time.
Mm-hmm.
These people were helping push co-working and take it to the next level. Now, I don't know, it seems like it's just so bastardized, you know what I mean? And it's a co-working, it's accelerating, it's incubating. What is it? What is it not? And co-working to me is, like less walls and more collaboration. So like what, he's talking about, I think happens naturally if you bring people together. Like, you're seeing co-working facilities, with multiple floors. And,
sure, yeah,
and lots of walls. And so like the accountant and the lawyer will come together to do a deal, and I don't know if that's be structured with how the phone's answered necessarily. Maybe they can do one temporarily, but it will happen naturally if people are working side by side with each other and not scurrying into a little office.
To an extent, but it also has to be curated. All right, that's not going to happen unless you have all of those skill sets present, and the people who are present are aware, and they make that connection that other person has the skill set that they need, and they get along with it, right? So it kind of has to be curated a little bit.
Well, yeah, I agree completely. And the word community is being overused as well. But if you've got a community of people, I think it's being overused, but if you've got a community of people,
bastardized,
and they're coming together, exactly, they're coming together, and you've created a sense of community. And community does not exist in a box. Do you know what I mean? People that, only a certain number of people can really create a certain type of culture that brings people together.
Right. And
there are connectors in the world, and you get connectors that are connecting people. And you've got things that help facilitate connecting, like alcohol, like mixers, wine tasting, golf outing. A lot of business gets done in those settings. More gets done in those settings than a lot of these, these propped up business meetings. Little gets done in a business meeting sometimes, and the more people are involved, the less is getting done. If the meeting's 2 people, a lot of shit's getting done probably.
The structure's too rigid.
Yeah. So, but and people are kind of, well, not everybody, but fluid. So business can move. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think those things will happen. And I know Bob, I know Sue, let's make this thing happen. And we'll start a little company and we'll call it, ABC or Acme Corp. And maybe it exists for 2 months, 3 months. That happens. You're going to see teams of people that are collaborating more and more. I think you're going to see that. Look at you. You're sitting here, you're sitting, with 5 more guys tomorrow. Then you're sitting with another 25 after that. That's happening.
It's happening, yeah.
I think you're going to see it happen naturally. Putting a structure on it, I don't know. It's kind of like...
Well, that's part of the question. It's like, how much structure is enough?
keep it as simple
It
as
has to
possible.
be pretty nebulous, but it also has to be, and maybe it's the curation, maybe that's the structure. Is somebody there paying attention and making those connections when they see that they need to be made? When they see that they maybe have been missed, right? So out there in the world, we've got people with different skill sets. You know some people and I know some people that should probably know each other, right? But unless that connection gets made, that's not going to grow. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's where the curation part needs to happen, and that's where maybe the larger true co-working endeavors need to have. And maybe it's not the right term, but like community manager. But community manager doesn't mean I'm the guy posting on social media. It means you're the person that's introducing people to other people and creating that environment where people can communicate and collaborate on things.
Yeah. You remember the old days, like, you watch a movie, or maybe it's even happened to you, but there'd be some chaperones. Hey, Jay, you need to meet Stacy. Stacy, you need to meet Jay. And they bring you over, they actually connect you, hey, Stacy, hey, Jay.
Well, there's companies doing that, like the founder dating guys, and there's a couple others out there that are doing stuff like that for business. But it always feels a little synthetic to me.
Yeah, but if you know people that know people, like, when you make a connection with me, say, Rick, you need to know so-and-so, I'm like, oh, okay, I do. I mean, if you've told me, you've got credibility. So if you've got good chaperones or good shepherds.
So it's that third party, that proxy introduction that makes it weird.
Yeah.
Because neither one of you know that person. They're just a facilitator.
Yeah. I mean, if you start wasting my time with people, we're not talking anymore about introductions. I mean, you might talk to me, but I'm like, I'm not going to meet,
Right.
You tell me to go meet, Joe. No. I know someone else tells me to meet Susan, and they've made good introductions. I'm meeting Susan, not Joe.
Right.
So you just have to have somebody that knows that and can feel each other out and takes a nose for the ball.
Yep.
And some people have that and some people don't. You can't just find that in a book. You got to have that just kind of ability, I think, to bring people together. But I think if you have social events around, a lot of the social events that we've done, I think, have brought people together. And I mean, you just find people that are like-minded. They're going to gravitate to each other. But I think you'll see, like, companies change, and companies will change the way that they work with each other, and then the way they work with outside firms too. And it's probably going to become a lot looser, I would say. I mean, we'll start working with your company, and you've pulled together 5 guys. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so you might see ad agencies pop up where you hire one creative director, and then he puts together the team, but there is no Smith, Jenkins, and Wilson on the door. There is no door.
Right.
And, let alone, Smith, Jenkins, and Wilson masthead,
Right.
And the companies, like, 3 amigos, and then it's gone. It only serves its purpose. It's, maybe it's pop-up. You get pop-up vendors, pop-up stores, pop-up productions. Maybe you have these pop-up companies for just, serving a purpose. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, is maybe there's a little bit too much importance placed on the longevity of a company to determine its success. If you start a company and you run that company for 2 years and you make your money and that company's shut it down, move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah, I mean, that company's served its purpose. Maybe the world changes every day.
And
the
for a
world has
company-
changed around it.
Yeah.
It's time to move on. It's time to do something else.
And for a company to be really successful, you've got to be willing to eat your young. Do you know what I mean? So maybe you've eaten that one, and
you have to kill the sacred cow.
Yeah. And maybe you're on to the next company. I mean, it's a new thing. It's okay, we're going to do this now.
Yep.
So, you're always iterating, pivoting, whatever you want to call it, the jargon of the day. But just, I know it's a little overused, but
Don't say that.
that's okay.
Whatever.